Hey, we're going to bring you another a webinar here this afternoon, and just like a couple weeks ago, it might not be what you want to hear, but we got to just bring things to you straight to help you make some decisions. So let's try to talk about crop sizes, and when we start talking about crop sizes, I think probably everyone wants to look at crop ratings, and we have here where crop ratings are now compared to what they were at a year ago. And if you look at corn, it's pretty similar, good to excellent, the same. Poor, very poor, down a little bit this year. You look to beans, the good to excellent. The crop was rated a little bit better last year than it is this year. Not big changes. When you go to the very bottom, though, let's just take a look at spring wheat, and even corn bean producers need to recognize this. The spring wheat crop was rated 68% good to excellent last year, only 37% this year. It makes sense. Look at the big jump up in the poor to very poor categories. So now what's happened with spring wheat production? Now, as we look at this next slide in here right now, on the September supply demand report, the USDA had the spring wheat production at 413 million bushels. Now, just on Friday, they did the small grains report, which is a final production estimate, and they had the crop all the way up at 468 million bushels. That's over a 13% jump in here, on the crop size, just from one report to the next. And when you look at the yield, overall yield was only down 2/10 of a bushel from last year to this year. So how did all this happen when you had that big drawdown in crop ratings? That's the big question, and what can be debated as we move ahead. Now, as we look at our next slide in here right now, it comes down to where's our corn and bean yields going to finally end up. Like we showed you on spring, we did at a big jump, even with the lower crop ratings. Right now, the USDA has a current yield at 173.3 from a year ago. Right now, it's 173.8, real similar. Beans, last year's crop was 49.5. The current USDA number is 50.1. You can see crop ratings were pretty similar. You have yield pretty similar to a year ago. But if we go back to spring wheat, the crop was rated poor, but the yield was end up big. So what went on here? And as we want to wrap up today, I mean, we want to sit here and focus on crop ratings, but I think a big change in these markets in the last recent years is social media. When you look at social media, everyone wants to see the poor crops out there, not necessarily the decent crops. The other thing we always gauge by is what farmers are telling us. And as we moved into the spring wheat harvest, we constantly heard that, hey, I've got pretty good yields, but it's not as good elsewhere. Well, it ends up now that everything was pretty decent, okay, and that these crop ratings just kept things probably a lot lower than what they were, the USDA surveyed at the end. When we get towards our spring wheat production, it just sticks out that it was a 13% jump in one report. When it comes down to this yield, we can tell you whatever you want to hear. Just today alone, we had a producer in north central Iowa telling us how his bean yield is averaging 24 bushels an acre below what it was a year ago. We had a producer in south central Illinois where his corn yield was down a little more than 40 bushels an acre than a year ago. At the same time, we could talk to a producer in southeast South Dakota, and their corn yield is more than double what they had last year, and at a producer in west central Illinois who was looking at harvesting a record crop. You can find what you want for yield, but you need to remember there's nothing more than a producer in Iowa wants to hear than how bad the crop is in Illinois. Okay. The last thing the guy in Minnesota wants to hear is about how good a crop is in Indiana. So you're not getting fed that from the news. When we take a step back and try to bring you a balanced outlook on these markets, as a whole, these yields are a little bit better than what people would have expected. We're not saying that this crop is going to grow a lot, but that spring wheat number from this past Friday is a big warning sign for us as we look ahead. Any suggestions on upcoming webinars? Give us a ring. Have a great day.